Welcome to today's episode of the Simply Financial Podcast. This is your host, Christopher Calandra. Want to increase your financial IQ with today's episode. I want to discuss with you the end of an era, the personal check. So according to Go Banking Rates, they did a report in late November 2023. They surveyed 1,000 respondents. And they found that 46% of the respondents said that they had not written a single check in all of 2023. They also found that only 15% said they wrote a few checks a month. As you might expect, this skews to older Americans. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Now I'm 53, so I'm going to sound a little like my parents and grandparents because the world is changed. It's changed to contactless and digital payment methods. This was a trend that was in place and only accelerated during COVID. But the wild thing is that checks originated in the 11th century. So they've been around hundreds of years. They went mainstream in the United States beginning in 1913 with a congressional act that created the Federal Reserve System. Although it really didn't become mainstream fully until after World War II, when the middle class and most Americans started having bank accounts and doing checking. Before World War II, it was more for the richest of Americans. So usage of checks, it's not just a 2023 thing, not just the last couple of years since COVID thing, but it's down 75% over the last 20 years. Usage of checks is down about 75% over 20 years. So it's clear that the trend is moving towards check writing, going into oblivion. In July of this year, 2024, Target, the big retailer, became the latest retailer to stop accepting checks. There's lots of other retailers that don't accept checks. Aldi, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way, has nothing to do with money or anything like that. Big fan of Aldi. They don't accept checks. Whole Foods doesn't accept checks. Other retailers, Lululemon, Old Navy, the list goes on. And part of that is because there's a lot of check fraud. So it's better for retailers not to accept checks. I think it's pretty clear that this new system that we're running on is not perfect because of identity theft, but it is superior to check writing. It's better than checks. And we've moved to using Venmo, debit cards, credit cards, Zelle. By the way, I recently did my first Zelle transaction in years, Apple Pay, etc. There's all kinds of different options out there, but that's what Americans have moved towards. That's what the system has moved towards. So we have the end of an era coming upon us as the personal check is set to move into oblivion. And it sort of makes sense. If you're listening to this, if you're older than me, my guess is you're probably still doing some checks, but probably a lot less than before. I hardly write checks at all. When I do write checks, they tend to be one-off occurrences. For example, my son Dominic recently graduated from high school, and he had a bunch of friends that graduated high school. We gave gifts to people that we were invited to attend their graduation parties, so we wrote checks. We have some weddings coming up, and so we'll write checks for the gift. But in terms of routine bills, utility bills, anything that sort of has any rhythm or routine to it, we're not writing checks. It doesn't happen. It's either automatic pay linked to the credit card, or I just pay them out of my bill pay system within my bank account online. So it makes sense. If you're older, probably writing some checks. If you're like me, you're still writing checks, but it's fewer and fewer all the time. For my children, my daughter's going to be 24 here in a little bit. My son's 18. They don't write any checks. I would imagine my daughter hasn't written a check in the last year plus, probably has only written a few checks in her adult life. And that, again, trend is going to be continue. So if you're my age, you could say goodbye to the check writing days. The good news is you don't have to balance your checkbook as much anymore like we did in the old days. So the end of an era, the personal check, sort of a lighthearted episode today, not as serious as some of the other subjects I tackle on the show. But I thought it was interesting, a bit amusing, and a little nostalgic too. I do appreciate you listening a lot. Thank you. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, the Simply Financial Podcast. That would be something that I would thank you if I knew you were doing it in person. So please subscribe. And also check out the work we do here at Elliott Wealth Management. Go to elliottwealth.com. You could find information about the work that the team and I do here, and you could sign up for a consultation. Thanks so much. I'll be back with you on the next episode of the Simply Financial Podcast very soon.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of Osaic Wealth, Inc., and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of information provided at these websites. Nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to or your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through Osaic Wealth, Inc., member FINRA, SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management Services, LLC, not affiliated with Osaic Wealth, Inc.